enthusiasm to want to go and be around the energy that was at the racetrack. And I was always a bit of an old soul, much like my son is now. I was always like an old soul, and I didn't really want to do anything else other than hang around with my dad. And I was always so enamored with uh, his magic, I'll say. And he had this ability to connect with people, all walks of life, from the most simplest and unsophisticated to the most complex and well accomplished and all those wonderful things and everything in between. And I think that's what really uh, just got me so excited to be around him. And so being around him, I've told this story a few times that some fathers have a situation where they'll take their kids out and they'll start throwing a baseball around in the backyard or the front yard, or they'll go to the park and hit some grounders and things like that, or throw a football. My dad had me a little bit later. He was 41, I believe, and so his connection with me was always the horses. And it's funny because education comes in many ways. You can go and get a what they would classify as a textbook Oxford type education, and that's your launch into the world. My education was more or less just having a front row seat to my dad and just listening to him from my very earliest years, when I really didn't even understand what was going on, right up until the day he passed away. And that was a really big thing. He was a huge influence, and he really had a magic. He had an uncanny ability to pick horses, and he had an uncanny ability to find diamonds in the rough. And his business was the lumber business was remanufacturing. So he would take lower grade lumber, and he would, through processing it and processing it, he would extract value out of it, cutting it into different things. So he was always a value added type of a guy. And I was always amazed at how that actually applied to his racehorses too. And so the stories I heard of the horses before I was born was these incredible deals that he would get, picking up a horse for $1,500 and winning 12 races with him, and winning a stakes race at Golden Gate. All these kind of things started, and I was just so in disbelief how he could do these things. But it was sort of a gift that he had, and I guess something wore off because I started to kind of think like he did. I understand what he would do, and I don't mean to be long-winded about this, but I'll just tell you an example. So my dad would get the California racing form back in those days, this late 70s and the 80s. He would get it delivered to the house, the weekend racing form. And I would often go through it, and he would say, okay, Jeff, take a look at this race, and you tell me the horse that you would buy out of this race, or you would claim out of this race. And I want you to tell me why you thought that way. And at this time I was 8, 9, 10, and I started doing this. And more often than not, I would always pick the one that he would have hoped that I would have picked. So it became sort of a foundation into me, that some of the things that would catch his eye, or that would give him that special feeling inside to think there's some sort of an opportunity here, seem to have gotten passed down to me for the most part. And one of the things was his graded stakes winner and Longacres mile runner, Mr. Prime Minister. I got a really interesting view of the world on that horse, because ironically, Mr. Prime Minister's very first race as a 2-year-old was against a horse that my mom had in the same race. Now, Mr. Prime Minister was owned by Jack Diamond, who was my dad's best friend. He owned the racetrack up here. Wonderful, wonderful man. I loved him dearly. And he ran against my mom's horse. Now, in the paddock, he flipped out. He threw the jockey in the paddock. He got loose. He got onto the track. He threw the jockey one more time. He ran around the racetrack. And because he owned the racetrack, the stewards didn't dare scratch scratch the horse. And I remember looking at it, I couldn't believe it. I remember saying to my dad, I said, Dad, how do they not scratch this horse? And he said, well, it's because he owns the racetrack, son. And I said, oh my gosh. And I said, well, I guess Mom has a good shot at winning this race. And he goes, yeah, she probably does now. And the gates opened, and he flung out of there like a rocket ship. And he ended up winning by 10 lengths. And I just was in awe. And I said, Dad, boy, that's a horse I'd love to own one day. And he goes, well, I don't think you're ever going to get him off of Jack now. And so he always kept on with the horse. And the horse went on to be the champion 2-year-old, was undefeated except for one race. And then he ran as a 3-year-old. And at that time, there was only 1 or 2 sprint races. And he won both of those, but then they all became route races. So Jack Diamond wasn't a very patient man. And if they weren't winning, out the door they went. And so my dad knew to approach him at the right time when he was getting frustrated, because he knew Jack so well. So he knew that, oh, this is a good time. Never go and try to buy something at the top of the market. Always try to find something down accessible. And so he went to him and said, Jack, Mr. Prime Minister, he's had better days. What do you think about selling them to me? And he said, oh, you're trying to pick my pocket now, aren't you, Donuts? That's what they called my dad, Donuts, because he was a little big guy. And sure enough, he bought him for $25,000, which was a bargain. And what my dad saw in him was that, here was a horse that needed maybe to kind of get off a bull ring, needed to get freshened up, and he could not route. But my dad's whole plan with him was, I want to sprint this horse, and I want to send him down to Buster Milrick, Hall of Famer now, Buster Milrick in Southern California. And he became a monster. He gave Patrick Valenzuela his first stake win in the sledge handicap at Hollywood Park. He ran back-to-back 1/5 off the track record races, and he ended up winning the Los Angeles handicap. And here all this was done with the horse that my dad paid $25,000 for out of Hastings Park, a BC bred, against all these $1 million Wayne Lucas, Richard Mandela horses. And I guess to me, I thought that the impossible all of a sudden was possible. So we got to the point where we started to look at horses, and that education that my dad gave me stuck with me.
No, and it's, it's funny. For me, there was a specific horse that made me fall in love with this game, and just, I feel like Mr. Prime Minister was that horse for you. But Julie Nakahara, who's one of the investors here, sent me this wonderful, sweet text, and she said, Kev, you've got to pick up the blood horse. You have to pick up the blood horse, and you got to look through it. And here, I gotta get to this page here.
You're gonna try to make me cry on your show, Kevin?
No, I'm not trying to. But let me just see if I can find it here. I should be able to find it. Okay, here it is. So there's this spread on you, and it's an 8-page spread on you in the blood horse, and it goes in to talk about you and your career, and just how fantasy it is, and how it just cannot be real what your life has turned out to be. And Claim to Fame is in this. If you guys pick it up, they do. Oh. And they do mention Claim to Fame, but there's one horse that they mention a few times in here, about eight pages worth, and that's Bud Royale. And for you guys who don't know who Bud Royale is, he was one of the greatest claims of all time. My dad claimed him for $50,000, and he went on to fulfill my dad's largest dreams in life. Being the Law Anchors Mile, being able to run second in the Breeders' Cup Classic, to win countless graded stakes race. And I know you refer to him in this article as he was like a dad to you, with what he was able to accomplish for you in your life and what he was to the family. And I was just hoping that you could kind of go through and explain what that journey was like, to be able to find a horse like Bud Royale, what it meant to you, what that horse meant to you, to the family, and how he continues to put a sparkle in your life and everyone who's a part of your life, and why he was not just such a special horse, but he was much more than just a horse to you.
Yeah, that's going to be a tough one to get through. I'll try to get through it as best I can here. But so yes, Bud Royale. What can you say about him? He is just he was just an absolute dream, beyond a dream. And if you kind of look back and say, like, Matt Damon and Ben Affleck had their dream moment when they put together this beautiful script, Good Will Hunting, and there it goes. It launched their lives for them, and there's stories like that where you look back and you say, this was the defining moment of my life. This set us on the path for the rest of our lives. And Bud Royale was that moment for the family. So yes, what was crazy about that is in 1996, like we had come through a pretty tough time financially. We got through the early 90s and it was a tough time, and we had sort of had an absence of racing for a while, and I hadn't been to California in a really long time, and I had just sort of gotten married a few years before, and my wife Nazi, Kevin's mom, my dad actually, ironically, my dad bought us for Christmas 2 airplane tickets to go to Los Angeles, and so we went down and we went to the racetrack, and on that day there was one race that for some reason I took some sort of a special interest. I don't know why. I guess it was an allowance race that was showcasing some of the top 3-year-olds. Back in those days, Santa Anita had they still sort of do, but they had the best 3-year-olds in the country, and there was a race, a non-winners of one, and Wayne Lucas had a horse in there for Bob and Beverly Lewis, and there was another horse in there that had Seattle connections of all things, Alan Sandy Kirkwood, and his name was Bud Royale, and he had just won a maiden 62.5 claimer at Hollywood Park, and he was running in there, and I thought, isn't this interesting? Here's a horse that just ran for maiden 62.5, and he's running against this horse that cost all this money, and there was a bunch of other royally bred horses in there, top connections, top trainers, top owners, all the rest of it. But there was something about this Calbred, this Calbred that had won so gutsy in his first race. And I sat up in the turf club with my wife Nazi, and I saw Wayne Lucas with his big sunglasses. Even though it wasn't bright inside the turf club, he had his big, beautiful sunglasses on, walking through the turf club, and he was talking to Bob Lewis on his way, and he had a horse in there called Grindstone. So Grindstone's in this non-1, and Bud Royale's there, and sure enough, the gates open, and it was a flat mile, and this horse took absolutely a beating to everyone in the field, just the way he did it. Like, he didn't care. He was getting pressured. He was getting, hassled on the front end, and he just was unfazed. And he went on and he won this race, and he beat Grindstone. Well, ironically, 2 races later, Grindstone won the Kentucky Derby. And the race after that one, he won the Louisiana Derby. And it was sort of a tale of 2 cities at that time. Bud Royale got injured shortly after that race. Grindstone, of course, went on to win the Kentucky Derby. But it always stuck in my mind. Like, I just remembered the performance. It was just so gutsy. He just reminded me of a fighter, just my kind of horse. Of course, I had no idea that I'd ever be able to own him, but I was just always stuck in my mind. So a few years later, we fast forward down the road. That was when he was 3. A couple of years later, I had managed to accumulate money in my account down at Santa Anita through winning a couple of races. It was our first time in Southern California. I took a couple of horses from Vancouver. One of them got claimed. And then the first horse I claimed down there won first time off the claim for us. And I had won another race with another horse I had just claimed. So I'd won 2 races off the claim. And all of a sudden I had $58,000 in my account. And that's a lot of money for me at 28 years of age. I was 28. And that's a lot of money. And all this time I thought, if I ever had a shot to try to take a big swing, now I have the money to kind of do it. And there was a race that was coming up in the book I had noticed. There's a flat mile for $50,000. And so I was going through the racing forum, and sure enough, after all these years, who pops up for 50,000? The Bud Royale. And I phoned up Ted, my trainer, Ted West at the time, and I said, hey, you know that there looks like there's probably 6 horses in this race that you could probably claim, make a case for. And then he goes, yeah, I know. We actually have our eye on one as well in that race. And I said, well, I really have my eye on one. And he goes, oh, well, who's that? And I said, it's the Calbred in the race, Bud Royale. And he goes, you know what? We really like that horse too. So I said, okay, well, the money's in the account. So why don't you see what you can find out? And the reason I loved him so much is that he was coming off a really bad race on the turf. And this game, there's a lot of vanity. People have to feel comfortable all the time. And it's like the stock market. If you're just going to kind of keep following the momentum, chances are eventually you're not going to do well. You have to kind of go against the grain, or you have to be brave enough to take a step when other people aren't willing to take that step. I think Warren Buffett says, be greedy when there's blood in the streets, and be cautious when there's complacency, or whatever that quote is. And the same thing applies to horse racing. And so he was coming off a bad race on the turf, and I thought this was maybe a good chance to try to get him. So back then there was no RTN or races at home on your TV or on your computer. I raced out to the racetrack to go and watch him run, and he was in the last race of the day in the farthest outside post. And it was muddy, and he won. And so we dropped the claim in for him, and he won the race. And I thought, oh my God, I was exhilarated because he didn't just win, he kind of annihilated the field. And I thought, oh my goodness, we could have something here. And I was waiting for the phone to ring. Ted wasn't calling me, and I was going, oh man, I wish he would phone and tell me if we got the horse or not. And finally Ted called, and he goes, oh, Jeff. He goes, yeah. He goes, you know, he bled like 5 out of 5. And I went, what? He goes, yeah, he bled a 5 out of 5. And I said, how does the horse win like that? And he bled a 5 out of 5. And he said, I know. I said, well, did we get him? And he goes, oh, yeah, we got him. And I was like, oh my gosh, thank goodness. And he goes, don't worry about the bleeding. He goes, you know, there's probably reasons for it, and we'll start working on that. They had some really good methods, the lasers to heal the lungs and stuff like that not a lot of people used. So we managed to get him to stop bleeding. So we ran him back the first time off the claim, and we ran him in an optional 80. So we ran him back for the price. And I couldn't believe that here, Jeff Sengara is running in an optional 80 in Southern California. And there was a horse called Pacific Bounty in the race who was on the Kentucky Derby Trail before. And, you know, there was all these like stars and these massive names of the game. And then there was this little 28-year-old kid in the paddock saddling a horse against all these guys. It was kind of overwhelming, you know, unbelievable. And he ran a flat mile that day, and I went down to see him run, and he freaked out, and he won by 5. And I looked up and I said, oh my God, we got one. Mm-hmm. And as I was walking out of the track that day, I was just sort of in shock. Tom Canoose, the racing secretary, stopped me before I was walking down the hall, and I had known him for quite well for a long time. He was a friend of my father's, and he said, Jeff, you know, you really should consider running. There's a grade 2 coming up called the San Bernardino. You might think about nominating for that. I think you got a shot. And I was like, what? You know, like, what is going on here? What life is this all of a sudden? And I'm saying you're talking about running in the San Bernardino. It was a $150,000 grade 2 stake race, and I couldn't believe that I was all of a sudden having these conversations. And so we actually ended up getting him ready, and it was a very rainy, wet day, and I brought a very young Kevin Sengara down with me, who was wearing a red little hat, all barely 1 year of age of him, and my wife Nazi and my sister-in-law Sarah, and we went down, and we were going to sit and watch one of our horses run in a graded stakes race in Santa Anita. It was overwhelming to think about. And sure enough, he did the impossible again. And he wired this good field. and he won by 5, and that started the journey of Bud Royale. It, like you say, I had lost my father at this point, and he did, like you say, fill that role for Naz and I, because he was just more than a racehorse. He was, the Lankers Mile was a dream that I couldn't even imagine ever winning. My dad came close back in those days. Thank you, sweetheart. And he won the Lankers Mile for us. He ran in the Breeders' Cup. He should have won that day if he didn't get bumped so many times down the lane by Cat Thief. And he just taught us how to be courageous. And it was just, yeah,
I know it's tough to talk about.
Yeah, yeah.
I know you're getting choked up, and I really appreciate that story, Dad. I know everyone here really appreciates it, and with everyone being mostly from Washington State, and the Lawmakers Mile being such an incredible race, part of packed with history, and it's the race to win in Seattle. Can you tell me a little bit about how you watched your dad try to win that race, and then you finally found the horse that you could do it yourself with? What that meant to you?
Well, it's funny you should say that, because after we won the San Bernardino, I was being interviewed in the winner circle, and they said, "So what's your dream? What's your goal now that you've got a graded stake horse that you claimed for 50,000, and you've got a graded stake horse, and where do you want to go?" And I said, honestly, the biggest thing I want to do is I want to win the Lankers Mile. That's my goal. And the great people up at Emerald Downs they obviously heard that and read that interview and that thing, and so Ron Crockett was very, Joe Withy and all of the team up there were very, very supportive, because they knew the history of the race with me to a certain degree, and they heard that as being a goal, and it was mentioned in the racing form, in the Blood Horse and all the publications back in those days, and they really were appreciative that the racetrack at Emerald was being named in something like that. And so I just didn't think it was ever going to be possible, because how do you compete and win stake races, graded stake races in Southern California with the horse you claimed for 50? And how could you think about the Lankers Mile, this holy grail that exists out there that everybody wants to win, but is so elusive? And we managed to. So after that, we ran some good races, and he won some stakes, and we shipped up after a tough beat in the Hollywood Gold Cup. We got beat by Skip Away, and it was just Bud Royale at 5 was not the same horse that he was when he turned 6. Like, he was very good, but he wasn't the Bud Royale that everyone has come to knows. And we went up to Emerald Downs, and he just didn't get a hold of the racetrack that day, and Wild Wonder won the mile. And I thought, geez, it's just probably not in the cards for me, like it's just too much to dream, but we regrouped, we shipped back down to Fairplex, or to Santa Anita, and we ran over at Pomona, and we won the Pomona. Oh no, sorry, we ran second in the Pomona Invitational to score quick, and then we went over and we won the Cal Cup Classic. So all of a sudden, he was sort of really putting things into gear, and so the following year, he really got good. Classic Cat was really hot at the beginning of the year. Bob Baffert's good older horse, and we ran second. And then he kind of had a breakthrough moment at Hollywood Park. He won the Mervyn Leroy by 5 lengths and really fast time, and he beat a really good field, event of the year, which was Golden Eagle's Derby horse, and a really strong group. And then he went on to win the Super Diamond, and he ran second to Old Trieste in the Californian. And at that time, Old Trieste was like a freak. He was just one of the fastest horses I had seen since Precisionist. He would go like 22 flat and 45 flat, 108 flat, and still carry on and go a mile in 133 and 1. Like, he was a freak of a horse. Gary Bizant's Cobra Farm owned that horse, and he ran second to him in the Californian, and then we entered in the Hollywood Gold Cup, and had Alex Solis not opened the rail up for Real Quiet, another Seattle connection, Mike Peagram's horse. We would have won the Hollywood Gold Cup that day, but Alex Lee's drifted out a little bit on, I think was it Porto Madero? I think it was. And opened, yeah, and then Real Quiet snuck through on the rail with Jerry Bailey. We just got beat in the Gold Cup, and then they started talking about Pacific Classic at the time. Ted and some of the people down there, they wanted, because Real Quiet, an interesting story. Just remind me to tell you about what Bud did, because Real Quiet never came back to race after that. And so they were talking about Pacific Classic, and I overruled everybody because he went to Del Mar and he ran. He never liked Del Mar at all. He hated that surface. And I kept saying, I said, win, lose, or draw the San Diego Handicap. I'm not running in the Pacific Classic. I want to run in the mile. I want to win the mile. This is a race this is probably going to be the only chance in my life to ever run in it and actually come to the race with the horse that is worthy in my mind to run in that race. And that was with Bud, obviously. And so they knew that the plans were Seattle, not Pacific Classic, come the end of August. And so we shipped up, and he came off a really bad race in the San Diego. He hated the racetrack, and he ran last. So everyone was giving me a hard time because they said, why are you shipping all the way up there? Because it's a really brutal ship, by the way, for the Southern California horses. They have to leave Del Mar at 3 a.m. They have to van to LAX. LAX, they sit on the tarmac for 2 hours. Then they fly to San Francisco. And from San Francisco, they fly up to SeaTac and then van over to Emerald. So it's a brutal, brutal ship. And they said, why are you going to do that? You know, you're coming off a bad race. You ran terrible in it last year. And all these things were starting to go through my head. And I was getting a little bit nervous, but I thought that, you know, we're going to do it. So I overruled them, and we shipped up anyways. And sure enough, oh, excuse me, one sec. Naz, in the second drawer, can you bring my battery charger for the computer? My battery charger in the computer. I'm so sorry. I didn't realize my battery's running low. So sure enough, he shipped up, and I was so upset. He didn't eat a single oat the entire time. I'm so sorry, you guys. Can you just give me 1 second? My computer, I didn't realize was low. Just 1 second.
Yeah, sorry. You're glitching a little bit. Uh-oh. Hope the computer doesn't die.
No, it's okay. There we go. There we go. Back to life again. Just like Bud in the second year he ran the mile. Back to life. Can you guys hear me okay? Am I good? Okay. So he didn't eat a single oat. So he shipped up awfully. And I was just terrified because at the time I had everyone coming down. I had flown Garrett Gomez up from Southern California, and I thought, geez, you know, here we are, and we're not coming into the race as good as we probably should be coming into it. But like Bud has done for this family, he shipped up terrible, had no business winning the race, and he ran on all heart. And that's the part where I say, like, he was like a father to us, is that in that race alone, he showed what kind of a special gift in life that he was to us. And he won a really courageous mile and really fast time. And that really set up the unthinkable, winning the Goodwood after that. And of course, the Breeders' Cup Classic. And it's just one story to tell you about that. One of the funny stories at the time was the Lioncreuse Mile. So when my dad came up to run in it, I was 11 years old. I had not turned 11 yet. And Mr. Prime Minister ran the Lioncreuse Mile, and it was the most incredible mile in history. Trooper 7 winning it for the second time, and it was an electric day. They talk about it all the time about how amazing that day was to all the Northwest racing fans. You guys all know how special that day was. And so Junior Coffey pulled me aside as I was walking back after my dad's horse had run fifth, just beaten less than a hair for fourth. And he goes, Jeff, don't walk with your head down. Keep your head up. Keep your head up high. And for some reason I was 10, and I looked at him and I said, okay. And we went back to the hotel right after I visited Mr. Prime Minister in the barn. I went back to the hotel, and my mom and dad were there, and they said, we're going to go out for dinner. And I said, I'm just too tired. I'm going to order room service. Is that okay? I'm just going to stay at home and just stay in the room and just watch some TV and order room service. So all I remember is I fell asleep. So the next morning, I wake up and I'm starving, and I pick up the phone to order room. This is at the DoubleTree, by the way, the old DoubleTree, just down the road from Long Acres, and not the newer one they built, the old 2-floor one. And I said, "Oh, this is Jeffrey Sengara, and I'm in room 213." And they said, "Oh no, you're not in 213, you're in 212." And I said, "No, I know I'm in 213." And then I look around, and I'm on the completely opposite side of where I normally am. And I go, "Oh, this isn't my hotel room." And they said, "Oh, you should probably go talk to your mom and dad." And I said, "What?" And so I look around, and I open my door. I look down the hallway, and I look across my room, and there's no door in my room. There's no door, there's no frame, there's nothing. There's an empty hole in the wall. I go in, and my mom and dad had an attached room to me. And I went and knocked on the door, and my my mom answered the door and said, she just shook her head, and she goes, "You're breathing." And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, let me tell you what happened." And I said, "Okay, what happened? I'm in the wrong room." They said, "We came home from dinner last night at Simon's." Simon's was a restaurant at the end of the road there, not far from the hotel. And they said, "We came home, and you listened to us. You double bolted the door and you put the chain on it, but we couldn't get in. We were banging on the door for 10 minutes. We thought you died." I said, "What?" They said, "Yeah." They said, "The fire department came, the police department came. The fire department brought 2 fire trucks. They lifted up the ladder, and they started to peek through, because there was about this much room left in the curtains. And they were peeking through the room, and I was sprawled on the bed. And the firefighter said, "Oh my God, we think your son's dead. He's not moving on the bed." So they came, and they went around with axes, and they knocked the wall. They knocked the entire door out. They knocked the frame out. The paramedics rushed in. My mom was in tears. My dad was just beside himself. He thought he lost his son. And I'm lying on the bed. They come in. They said, "Oh my God, he's still breathing." They pick me up, and they shake me. I didn't wake up. They tried to knock me. I didn't wake up. So they said, "Okay, well, he's fine. There's nothing more we can do. He's breathing. He's okay." So they picked me up, and they moved me across the hallway to another bed, and I still stayed asleep. And I knew none of this until the next day when I go.
What you're saying is that a loss in the mile takes a lot out of you.
That day there definitely put the destination of what my goal was for the rest of my life, to win that race. It took an awful lot out of me. I couldn't believe it. They still joke about it to this day, about how hard I took that loss. And there was something very special about that day. So years later, to be able to finally win it was just the most incredible moment of my life. My kids being born, obviously, marrying my wife, but in terms of a dream that we all sort of shared together, it was an incredible day.
Wow, thanks Ted, for that story. I can't get sick and tired of hearing that story. But it's funny. I want to make sure everyone has a chance to ask their questions, of whatever that might be. But I want to just end here with one question before I open it up to the floor. But you and I have both gone to the sales together. We've gone and we've done private purchases, and we've bred our own horses. But why is it that you were a multiple graded stakes winner with just the claimers? Every single horse that you've claimed, or every single graded stakes winning horse that you've ever had, has been a claimed horse. How does that work? What is the science behind that for you? And how is it that you can go overseas and you're picking out all these horses, turf horses, and they're calling the next great one and all that, yet here you are claiming 35, 40, 45, 50, 62.5, and you're in the Bing Crosby, you're in the Breeders' Cup Classic, you're winning the Lone Star Mile and Long Acres Mile. How does that work? Because you ask somebody else to do that, it's tough for them to say, well, it's impossible. You can't.
Well, thank you for that. I guess I'm a lucky guy, to be honest with you. I'm just a lucky guy. We do put a lot of work into it, and racing is a very, very tough game. And I look in September for no other reason than I'm just really entertained putting the Keeneland Sale on my TV throughout the day as I'm working, and I'm looking at horse after horse after horse, 500, a million, 2 million, 600,000, 400,000. I'm looking, and if the game was just locked out to everybody, and it was just the same 100 multi millionaire and billionaires participating in this game, uh, I'm not sure there would be any. I'm not sure there would be the following that there is to racing that there is now. I think that the fact that a little guy can compete and run against the billionaires is what's so special about this game. Uh, Howard Hughes had this when he was dealing with all the Hollywood moguls back when he was trying to make a movie or get started. Tucker, the guy that built that car that was trying to compete with the Fords of the world at the time. And I think if there's something that you can see, or that there's something that works for you, horse racing gives you the opportunity to bring it out. And that's what's so special about it. We've been really lucky because we could never, like, for example, our current really, really good horse right now is a horse called Midnight Mammoth. We claimed him for 50,000 a few years ago, and we have now run against, I believe it's, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's 12 Bob Baffert horses since we first claimed him. Now, Bob Baffert, if you walk into Santa Anita and you see all the names on his barn, and it's quite impressive and everything, but there were 12 once in a lifetime horses for most people that we've run against that are no longer running. And I can list them all off: Miramati, Imagination, the Funded, it just keep going, Reincarnate. These are all massively expensive horses. And here we are with a $50,000 claim that has managed to not only just beat those horses, but he has been running now. This will be his fourth season of running for us, and that's the thing that is so important. What our secret is you have to have a trainer that really cares about you, your family, and your money, and not just someone who's just going to smile at you and take your money and not really have much substance below the eyes. You have to have a trainer that's got a really good heart, I think. And if you're able to have a trainer that's got a wonderful personality, a warm heart, and an incredible knowledge of racing, you have the trifecta there.
Mm-hmm.
That's critically important. There, and really, if you're missing one of those three things, it's probably not going to work. You can have a really great personality, but that person doesn't really know enough about racing. Well, that's not going to work. Then you're going to have someone who really loves your family but doesn't know much about racing, or can't give you the safety that your money's in good hands. Well, that's not going to work. You really need to find someone who's going to put you first in every regard, and that's a very difficult thing to find. Our family's been really lucky that Craig Dollase, we were both at the time the youngest. I think I was the youngest owner to ever place in a Breeders' Cup at the time, a Breeders' Cup Classic with Bud. I was just 30, and he was the youngest trainer to ever win a Breeders' Cup. He won it with Re-Rays. And so at the time, Craig had, I mean, the whole world wanted Craig at the time. I mean, he had all the top owners in North America, giving him lots of horses. Fortunately for me, we met up again, actually through my wife and his wife Nancy at Emerald Downs, and they were having their 20th anniversary, and he was open to the idea of getting horses going with him. And he didn't train for West Point anymore, and he hadn't trained for some of the other bigger owners. Some of the owners had passed away, some of the owners had retired from racing, things like that. So there was an opportunity for a little guy to get a guy that's absolutely brilliant trainer. He's a brilliant trainer, and He loves our family, loves my son Kevin, loves my daughter Anita and Nazi. There's a closeness there, and he cares about our money. And he doesn't just, like, we were at the sale, and I don't normally buy at sales, but there was a horse that we were looking at, and we were getting a bit excited and bidding up, and he told Kevin to knock it off. I'd rather have no horse than for you to get this horse at that. And I really meant a lot. So having a trainer is very important. I think the other thing is you need to give yourself as much good information as you can. We really put a lot of work into the horses. I watch replays uh, extensively, watching replays, little things that that we can pick up about the horse. Is there something that you can see that the horse maybe need an equipment change? Is there something with his running style that needs to be modified? Is there something physically with the horse that you see that maybe you can change? That's the other part. We look at the workouts as much as we can. They don't always have all the works, but we look at the workouts very closely. I keep a very deep journal on workouts for all the horses. I reference those quite a bit. There's so much more information now than there was back in the old days. If you're able to access the abundance of information that's out there, it's critically important to be able to immerse yourself in all of it. And the third thing is don't find safety in numbers. Always walk to your own path. Even if it doesn't look like a popular decision at the time, stick to what you know and what you feel is right about this. Because this would be a really easy game if everybody knew what to do and everybody sort of followed the safe route. Oh, here's a horse that's won 3 in a row. I'm going to go claim this horse for 25,000. Well, that's a pretty obvious claim. I'm pretty sure that the owner of that horse that's running his horse that's won 3 in a row for 25 doesn't really want to lose the horse, but there he is in for the 25. Don't follow the crowd and think, this is where I got to go. Find the one. This is one thing that's very important. Every graded stake horse that I've ever claimed and ever had, I've only been the only claimant for them. I've never had to shake for any of my good horses, any of my graded stake horses. I've never had to shake, not one time, for any of them. We were always the only claim in. And I think that's the biggest point I can make to everybody is don't look for something obvious. You have to go deeper into it and find the non-obvious choice. Because there's a reason why if something is too obvious, it's the old too good to be true situation. It applies to horse racing.
Thank you, Dad. Those are really, I can't even tell you how much I appreciate all of these stories and information. And I think I'd just like to open up the floor to questions. If you guys can just click the little raise button there, I think it'll just kind of happen in order. If anyone has any questions. Jenny, you're the first one on that list. So what's your question, Jenny? Oh, and I think you have to unmute yourself. I think you just have to unmute yourself, Jenny. Here, let me see if I can do it for you.
There we go. There we go. Okay. So I wanted to see if I can get this up or if it's going to come in sideways. But
the LA Times.
The LA Times article. And it was a classic article to read, Kevin, because it talks about Jeff, what were you called him Bud, right? For a long time.
Little Bud. That's right. His first word was Hoss, H-O-S-S. And it's funny because the owner at Hollywood Park at the time, I'm forgetting his name right now, but he had come up the day before the Hollywood Gold Cup and he said, "Oh, is this Little Bud?" And I said, "This is Little Bud." And yeah, Bud Royale. He gave Kevin his first nickname.
So the article, Kevin, says that you spurned Disney and wanted to watch the VCR recordings instead of Bud Royale.
It's a true story. That's a true story. I was such a bad parent. I was depriving my children of watching the Disney station as they were watching all the replays and Fox Sports Northwest with all the replays of the races from Santa Anita. Yeah, and that's what he wanted to watch.
Oh
I
man.
just loved it. I love that article because it was a very great insight into your family. It was wonderful.
Oh,
Oh,
thank you,
Jenny.
Jenny. That's so sweet. That's so sweet.
Oh,
It was a wonderful article and magical time.
Yeah, it really was.
thank you, Jenny. Awesome, awesome. And Dave, I saw you put your hand up. Just gotta unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
There you are.
Yeah. No, I went and got the program from the banquet. Yeah. Someday lady, she was champion 3-year-old filly, BC bred in open division. She was in that. That's the one Chi Time took. She was also BC bred horse of the year. She was in. That was taken by Rondolito.
Yep.
And open horse of the year.
That's right. That's right.
Same thing. Rondolito again won that one. So
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
Really
he's
good
got her
horse.
name up there front and center, but
Yeah. There'll be lots of awards for her down at Emerald next year. That's for sure. I think she's going to have a great. I'm really excited to see her on a mile racetrack. I think she's Emerald is such a speed loving track, and she has that natural speed. I think she can sprint, when she has to. But I think what she's really going to love to do, I think she's going to really love to two turn on that track and have that tactical speed. I think she's going to be a really fun horse to be involved with there this year.
do you how much difference is there in the track surface there? Like the actual makeup of the track compared to Hastings?
Well, I think Hastings here last year was some of those times they ran were just insane. Like Chi Time ran some insane times. I couldn't believe it. And Emerald's always been a bit of a fast surface. That's why Bud loved that track so much. At least the second time, it was just a hard bottom, and they could really hear their feet on it. And I think the fact that they're going to be similar in the fact that I think they're fast, but they've got a good cushion, but it's a firm cushion, which I think is really important. I'm not a big fan of those deep tracks. I just think that to me, I always worry about soft tissue injuries when the track is a bit too deep. I'd rather have a hard track. They prefer that over, like in the wild, horses would run on fields, and they weren't cushioned or anything else. They were usually pretty hard. I think that's a much better way for them to go. So I think she's going to like that surface quite a bit.
Yeah. No, I was just wondering because with the money situation at Hastings, I don't think there was too much put into the resurfacing or anything of that track. So see how that worked out. But the one thing I was happy about the whole track last year, there wasn't one breakdown.
Yeah, they did a good job.
We lost one horse to a heart attack, but that could have happened anytime.
Yeah.
But we actually were still sitting in our box, freezing to death on the last night, just to make sure I could see the whole season without one horse breaking down.
Yeah, that was great, Dave. They did a fabulous job keeping the track very, very safe. I was really happy to see that. The last few years have been really, really good. And from what I heard from Melissa, the track was really, really good last year and the year before at Emerald. And I think they've got a new track person that's done a really good job with that surface. So I think it's going to be a wonderful year for everyone to watch their horses and know that they're on a great surface. Plus, the one great thing about this program Kevin has put together is that their involvement with Pegasus. Now, Pegasus is just like you're dealing with the Ritz-Carlton of operations. It is. We take it for granted how incredible what we really have the opportunity to be involved with, but like seeing them in the pool right now, getting legged up what they've done is they're in the pool, they're in the equisizer every day. They have a beautiful synthetic track, which I'm not huge fans of synthetic tracks, except in certain climates that need it. And in the Northwest, as we all have experienced over the last while right here, it's so wet, so cold. That track surface is consistent and safe. So they have that to train over as they're getting ready to run. But the beautiful thing about Pegasus right now is that all of the hyperbaric chambers, all of the equipment that Dr. Din Monaco left behind for all of us to share in is remarkable. And they don't have to have the weight of a rider or the impact of the concussion, getting ready to run, getting all those miles underneath them. They're getting all their miles in the pool right now, 2 laps of that pool, and it's incredible. So good for the heart, so good for every muscle part of their body. And when they get ready, I think they're starting to gallop next week, or this week. And I think they're going to have their first workout in about 2 weeks. So they're going to have a tremendous head start, I think, with the facilities that they've been able to be utilized.
Thank you. Thanks, Dad, and thanks, Dave, for your question. And I see Anita. Anita, you have your hand up. What's your question? I see my fiance there too.
Hello, we're here. Um, I just wanted to say a quick thing, just back to Bud Braille, our special boy. I think it'd be kind of fun for everyone to know where he got his name from.
For Bud Royale, what
The
a great,
story of how he got his name, Dad.
yeah, that's a great story. So Cecilia Straub Rubens was the original owner of Bud Royale. So she owned C's Tizzy, the sire, and she owned C's Song, who eventually gave the world, right after Bud, gave the world Tiz Now, who, as we all know, won the Breeders' Cup Classic back-to-back, and America's Horse, winning it after 9/11, and all of those great things. Well, Bud Royale paved the way for him because he won the Breeders' Cup Classic the year after. Bud ran second in it the next 2 years. So Cecilia Straub Rubens, interesting story. When we were walking out of the Breeders' Cup Classic that day, Cecilia, who didn't own Bud Royale anymore, lost the horse in a claiming race the day he ran for 32, was it? And then they ran the horse back. Was it Richard Matlow? Ran him back for 62.5, and it was claimed, and was bought privately by Mike Puhich, of all people, if you can believe that, and Alan Sandy Kirkwood. So when I was walking out of the racetrack that day, Cecilia Straub Rubens, who had been away from this horse since the very first race, how hard was that to take? Watching a horse that you raised and bred go on to all this incredible history, second in the Breeders' Cup Classic, and she had never had a good horse in all of her breeding program. They never had a good horse. So she was such a wonderful person. I'm walking out, she's walking down the escalator, and she screams out my name, and I look up and I go, oh my gosh, it's C. Oh, C's Tizzy is after Cecilia, by the way, and C's Song, Cecilia. She goes, Jeffrey. I look up and I go, oh my gosh. She comes running with her arms out, and she's tears and crying, and she said, I'm so proud of our boy, and she was so happy and all the rest of it. And so she tells me, she goes, you know how Bud Royale got his name, don't you? And I said, no, I don't. So Cecilia Straub Rubens and her first husband owned the Budweiser distributorship, the beer distributorship in Southern California. So that was theirs. So they were in the beer business, and then and his name was Roy. That was his name. So she got remarried because Roy passed away, and then she remarried and got married to a lovely guy named Bud. Was his name. So when this little foal was born, she had it in her mind that, she loved this foal. I have a picture of him actually when he was just born. He's so cute. He goes, you know what? I'm going to honor both my husband and our business with this horse. So they were in the beer business. So she goes, I'm going to call this horse Bud, Roy, Al, A-L-E, for ale, which is another word for beer. And that's how Bud Royale got his name.
That's a great
She
story.
covered a lot of ground in that name.
That's a great story. Well, if there's no more questions, or if anyone has any last questions, I just want to say, Dad, thank you so much for jumping on and sharing your wisdom, all your fun stories. It means a lot to all of us, and me included. And we're just also excited to see you in Seattle when all the claim to fame horses are running, and hopefully we have a couple of winner's circle pictures with you this year.
Oh, thank you so much. It's so great to see all of you. And I'm just so grateful that all of you have trusted my son. And I have to tell you, you're in with good people. He is, you will not find a more loving, kind, and he's learning he's learned an awful lot in a very short period of time. I'll be honest with you, he's picked up a lot, and he's actually teaching me a few things now, to be honest with you. And I think that all of you are fantastic, and I wish you guys the most success and wonderful time. I can guarantee you Kevin will make sure everyone has a wonderful experience in this, and hopefully these memories will be ones that last with you for forever. And I know you're in great hands, and I'm here to cheer you on and be right a part of it with you every step of the way.
Thank you so much, Dad. That means the world. Truly. Thank you, Dad.
Yeah,
all right,
absolutely.
guys. Well, thank you so much. I'm gonna just see here. Yeah, I think we're all done here, guys. Really, really appreciate everyone's time taking out an hour on a Sunday. I know sometimes it can be tough, but really appreciate you all for being here. And I'm so excited for our taco night to hopefully not get canceled this time coming up. All right, guys.
Thank you, guys.
So much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Not